Any of you who've been to International Music Camp up in the Peace Gardens know the motto there was always early's on time and on time's late. Well, we didn't quite make that because we always want to make sure that people can get joined up and signed in, but we've got, it looks like 7 out of our 10 registered attendees jumping on, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So a few weeks back, Margie and I were wondering what would be a good idea, and we decided everybody loves SmartLists. So we thought today we'd talk about SmartLists. And then what happened is we had 2 excellent cases this last week that just made us really see the importance of this, and also some additional pieces on today. So I'd like you to welcome you to the Implementation Specialist Dynamics GP Showcase. As I said today, our plan is to do Dynamics GP SmartList. I have to admit, we're going a little bit beyond just plain old SmartList today. We're going to take you from novice, maybe not to master, but getting there in 30 minutes. And like I said, what we really saw in the last 2 weeks is it's not just SmartList, but some of those add-on pieces as well. So we'll try and be somewhat transparent as we go through to show you what pieces we're doing within SmartList, what we're adding the E1 product of SmartList Builder on to do to add some additional pieces, and then we'll also talk at the end about other add-on pieces such as the E1 Excel report builder and things like that. So like I said, it's Margie and myself. I will do most of the talking today as poor Margie's coming down with that awful cold, but she's going to be my driver there. So let's go ahead and get started.
Hi everyone, sorry. Okay, let's get started. All right. Oops, hang on.
Okay, so like I said, our agenda today, we're going to start with SmartList, but then we're going to look into SmartList Builder, how you can create and modify some simple basic SmartLists for your reporting needs, and then when there's one more piece you need to add and you just can't find it, that's, like I said, when we moved with a couple of these cases this last week to SmartList Builder so we could add on some additional information. Both with the regular SmartList and SmartList Builder, we'll talk about some of our field options. I'm sorry, but we're going to have to talk a little bit about math and Venn diagrams with our ands and nots too, and how those work in SmartList and SmartList Builder. And then we'll talk about some of those hidden gems that will make you look like a master, as far as some additional Dexini switches and things like that that you can add to make SmartList exporting run a little faster when you send things to Excel, how to make dates actually work if you're using Excel Report Builder, and some of those hidden gems. All right, so let's get started. So what is SmartList Builder? Like I said, we're going to start out with our basic SmartList and tell you what our customer need was that we were working on this week, and then where it was that we got to the point where we decided we needed SmartList Builder. And what that'll help you do is when a regular or default SmartList falls short of your requirements, you can add some additional tables, make some calculated fields, and things like that to take your SmartList just a bit further. So let's go ahead and go into GP and take a look at the report that we were working on with a customer. So under Microsoft Dynamics GP, we go to SmartList to launch our regular SmartList. Now you may have a shortcut on your bar. And then because Margie's our resident payroll expert, we were working with some employee summary data. And so we'll just go ahead and look at the default one. And oh, lovely. We've got employee ID, last paycheck number, last paycheck date, last paycheck amount. But what we were kind of looking at was to do a quarter-end report. So what Margie and I did with this customer is we went ahead and added the gross wages for January, February, and March to this report. So one thing I want to point out as Margie's scrolling through, notice her drop down says available columns. That drop down does have multiple options, so sometimes people won't see what they're looking for, and it depends on what they're displaying here. So she's going to go ahead and add January, February, and March for me. Now again, those of you who are experts with your mouse plus your keyboard know that you can use your control and your shift keys to multi-select. And the other thing we wanted is we wanted to add name information, because in payroll, do we really have everybody's employee ID memorized? Perhaps not. So we can add their name information to our report. All right, so now we've got our columns displayed and we look at it. Now, do we really want the year, though, to be the first column we see on this report? Most common, we probably want the last name to be the first one. So if we go ahead and click columns again, Margie can highlight last name and pop that up to the top for us. And then there may be things that we want removed as far as, do we really need to know what their last paycheck number was for this quarter end report? We probably do not. So Margie can highlight last paycheck number for me and click remove, and now this is not going to show up. Now, if we've got our employee ID, we can sort by employee ID, last name, we can add some of that information as I said. Now, if we go ahead and click OK, we've got a good start to our report. We've got names and things like that. Now, the other thing, though, that we wanted to do was we wanted to reduce and not show absolutely all of the employees and all of this information for all of the years. I want a quarter one report. So I'm going to go ahead and click on search and say that I want gross wages of January is greater than 0. Gross wages in February greater than 0. And gross wages in March. Now that was the magic word I just used. And. Now if I'm truly printing a quarterly report, does this person have to have work and wages for every month? I'm printing a quarterly report. I want this if they have any gross wages in any of those. So now we're back to 5th grade math and Venn diagrams. If you look in the lower right-hand corner where it says search type, it says match all. So my employees would have to have wages in all 3 of those for them to show up. I really want it to show up if they have money in any of those columns. So switching to match 1 or more makes this OR logic rather than AND logic. So we click OK. And we've got a little less showing there. Now, I've got 2016 and 2017 and 2015 on here. This was one of the pieces that pushed Margie and I to realize, oh my goodness, we probably need to do SmartList Builder here, because we, as you saw, we weren't able to do our and or logic in the search button. Now, some of you who are advanced mathematicians might be able to figure that out, but could we really get it done with just our 4 options and fields there? So we'll talk about that. But the customer we were working on this for, the other need they had was they needed the position on this report. So Marty and I went to columns when we said, no problem, let's just add position. And we clicked on available columns, and we looked, and we looked, and we looked, and the position was not to be found. So even when we chose all columns, so we were kind of stuck. So SmartList wasn't going to work for us in this situation. So we closed out of our SmartList and made our switch to SmartList Builder. So Tools, SmartList Builder, SmartList Builder. And again, like I said, we'll try and be perfectly clear. When we're doing SmartList Builder, this is an add-on piece. This is not with default Great Plains, an add-on piece available with us through E1 Solutions. So let's go ahead and click on the drop-down, Marty, and show them. Now, we saw here we could choose existing. And at first, Marty and I looked at that and thought, well, we'll just add it to the existing one. But how many of you have tons of saved SmartLists based on a default SmartList? I may be overly cautious, but I typically think create new rather than modify existing, especially if it's a default. But let's go ahead and look at the existing one we were working with, and I'll show you why we did that. So it was our, I think, employee summary default one that we were working with. And why did we look at the default one first? We were kind of cheating. We wanted to see on the left what our tables were and what our default field names and things were to see, okay, when we create the new one, what do we want on there? So let's go ahead and click clear and start on our new one. So we can just give it a name such as POS/COD to say this is our one for position code, adding the position code. And then this can be position code, Q1 summary, or however we want to do it. And then the series. What do we choose as a series and what does this control? We're going to choose payroll today so it shows up with the rest of the payroll SmartList, so it makes sense. But I'll be honest with you, I have seen people hide the payroll ones in something funny called company, just so people don't stumble upon them by accident because they haven't had the time to set up their security at the level it needs to be. So we're going to set it to payroll. We've got our security set the way it needs to be, so it shows up on payroll. So the first thing we do is go ahead and add that employee summary table. And unfortunately, here it's called Payroll Employee Summary Table. It's not quite a match for match. So we've got our Payroll Employee Summary, and you see our key fields are Employee ID and year. And now because Marty is a payroll expert, we figured, and you probably know too, our very favorite table in payroll, the UPR 100, the Payroll Master is where we're going to find our position code. So we went ahead and added that table. And I think this one's called the Payroll Master instead of the Employee Master. And indeed, our key fields is Employee ID to Employee ID. And then which fields do we want to default on our SmartList? We had employee ID, first name, last name, and then we've got job title here, which is what our position code is in the table. And then we can go back to payroll and summary, employee summary, to add our Q1, Q2, and Q3 gross wages. Now you'll see again another little tricky thing here is gross wages doesn't have January, February, March here, not the friendly names. It is the array names instead. So it shows 1, 2, 3 for what is your basically period 1, 2, 3, which in U.S. payroll, from my understanding, again, I'm not as much of an expert as Marty, is January, February, March. But we add 1, 2, 3, and then we've got our January, February, March. And then if you remember, what was the other need I had? The inability to do my and or restrictions together. So what I did is I did a restriction and click on the add for restriction, where in the payroll employee summary, the year is equal to 2017. And now I've just got my 2017 data. All right, so we'll go ahead and save that and take a look. And when I go ahead and launch SmartList Builder, or I'm sorry, SmartList, it does tell me that because I've used Builder, I have made changes, and it'll need to rerun queries to go ahead and build that new SmartList I've created. So I click yes, expand payroll, and now under my new position code, I've got my employee ID, last name, first name, job title. And again, we can go ahead and do any searches, columns, modifications that we did on our previous. So again, if we want to pop up employee ID to the top, and if we click add, even though we haven't defaulted other columns, you'll see there are the additional columns available based on what is in those tables that we added. So one other thing that we want to talk about, this specific report didn't highlight, but Margie, let's go ahead and go to under purchasing. I'm sorry, the purchasing folder on the left in SmartList. And if we take a look at payables transactions and look at the default one. So a couple of things we said we'd talk about today is, all right, what about amounts? What if I'm not able to reconcile to accounts and things like that? A couple of things we want you to look at here is take a look at the document type. You'll notice invoice and current transaction amount for the invoice shows as a positive. Go ahead and sort by document type for me, Margie, by clicking on document type at the top. And so the one thing you'll want to be careful with is with the different document types. For this one, it says current transaction amount, but if you're pulling document amount or something like that, realize that a credit document might still show as a positive amount. And in GP, it is the document type that tells it to be negative. So that's one of the first things to be aware of with exporting to Excel and using this to add and tie out things, is it's often the document type plus the amount that decides what the sign is or sign should be for the amount. So should this be a positive amount or a negative amount? The other big gotcha here is if we go ahead and click on the search button, if you will, Margie, in the upper left, and go ahead and click on the looking glass. And let's see, is there under all columns, switch to all columns, and then is there a void option in this one? Indeed there is. Let's go ahead and hit OK. And we want voids equal to no. And then go ahead and hit OK there again. And so then if we have ones where void is equal to no, we only have actual documents. So that's another trick that I've seen. A lot of people will pull everything out and then their voids are there. So again, it's hard to reconcile amounts if you've got voided transactions included. Let's go ahead and click on the search button one more time. The other things we pointed out in the lower right, the match all versus one or more to switch between your and or logic. And then the also big gotcha here is the maximum records in the lower left-hand corner. Defaults always to 1,000. So in a very large list, such as your financial transactions list, 1,000 typically isn't going to cut it, especially if you're using it for reconciliation. So you can change it to 2,000, 200,000. If you change it to all nines and hit OK, you'll notice the number changes on you because SmartList is smart enough to figure out it can't do the all nines, and so it will set it to what the true maximum is in SmartList. I never memorize that number. I just set it to all nines and let it work its magic. All right. So there are some basics with SmartList. Now, here's the other thing is we've made these changes to this one. We should probably go over how do we save this so we don't have to do this every day. We can go ahead and click on Favorites and give it a name. And, yep, we'll call it Test. We say who it's visible to. So again, for complex payroll ones, you might only want it visible to your user ID or your user class with your calculations. A lot of mine I will let go to system or company, but the other thing we found out is when letting it set to system or company, I make a smart list. I'm working with it. Somebody else finds it, really likes it, and then when I make changes, they don't realize I made the changes. So we've run into those problems as well. So we'll go ahead and make it visible to company and click Add. I can add a reminder as well, but I'll add the favorite. And then the other thing is, okay, now I decide to make my changes. How do I make those changes? Up in the upper left, I would click Modify to make my changes. And the other thing is that we want to do is a lot of times I will also have people run into where they need to delete a favorite because it's no longer valid. So we can close the button or close SmartList Builder window and we can click favorites. And we can go ahead, we click modify from here to modify our favorite or remove from there. The modify takes us to the SmartList Builder. Thank you, Marty, for slowing us down through that so we can see the two differences there. So as I said, we've shown you some of the basics of SmartList, how to take it a little bit further with SmartList Builder to add some restrictions and add some additional tables. Let's go back to our PowerPoint then. We created our simple SmartList and saw that our position field was not there, so we had to make some changes. All right. So we added one with multiple tables, and then the two links I wanted to point you to then today, like I said, one that I ran into, not with this report with this customer, but with a previous customer, as I took and built an Excel report, and we were having some hard times calculating ship dates and things for an inventory report, because from SmartList into Excel Report Builder, when you send something to Excel Report Builder, the dates will send as text rather than as dates. So to make them send as actual dates, there is a help document on E1's website for that, specifically for Excel Report Builder. And then the next link is a link that has a list of DEX any switches. And like I said, I think there are somewhere between 5 and 10 just specifically for SmartList, one of which will make the exporting work a little faster, and some other items like that. So those were some of those take it further type articles we wanted to show to you. But again, whenever you make any type of change in the DEXINI like these, we always recommend you test on your server and with your test environment and check it out, and then see where it goes from there. So if you have any questions, you're considering SmartList Builder, what it might do for you, or need some help on anything we've done today, here's our main number, 218-486-5095, and our generic support line, support@iscorp.biz. We've had several different webinars in the past few weeks. Bo and Margie a few weeks ago talked about building a custom list for help with payroll. I talked about navigation lists, and we'll keep going farther. And if you have any questions, you can also look at our website at iscorp.biz. Let's go ahead. If you have any questions, I am not certain that I can take all of you off of mute. Marky, if you can, we can do that. Otherwise, if we can't get everybody off mute, you can also have any answer or ask any questions you have in the question pane over in the webinar pane.
Everybody is off mute, so you can just speak up, or if you want, you can put a comment into the chat or raise your hand for a question, and we can take those too. I don't see anybody raising their hand or adding a question at this point.
And I know a lot of people who sign in have their quick half hour and then they need to go to lunch. So we'll wait a couple more minutes to see if anyone can think of something as they're absorbing this information. But like we said, the link to this webinar provides your contact back to Brandon. We can field questions through him through email, and like we said, we provided support@iscorp.biz as well, where you can send questions you have at our normal rate.
Okay, a few people have dropped off right now, and I still don't see any questions in the chat or any hands raised. So thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Heather, for speaking through the whole thing.
Yep, and thank you, Margie, and we all hope you feel better soon. So we'll go ahead and sign off. Oh, no? Question?
Question.
Oh, I thought somebody was going to talk, but maybe not.
Oh,
All right.
Have a good
Thank
day,
you.
everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.